Acute levels of very high stress are definitely bad for the brain in the sense that it begins to change and reorganize. But it's when those acutely elevated levels of stress and stress hormones like cortisol become chronic that we start to see these physiological brain changes that we've been talking about. But, and this is the good news, not all stress is bad. As you can see here, the relationship between stress and performance follows this inverted U-shaped curve, where the brain doesn't really like having very, very low levels of stress much more than it likes having very, very high levels of stress. Instead, the sweet spot seems to be at this moderate level of stress, which makes a lot of sense when you understand that stress, in some respects, is just energy. So let's take the stress hormone cortisol, since that's the primary one. You can talk to any physician, and they'll tell you that there are just as many physical conditions associated with the underproduction of cortisol as there are with the overproduction of cortisol. So even when it comes to the body, we really need this sort of happy medium or moderate amount. And for the brain, it's the same thing, because cortisol is in a class of hormones called glucocorticoids, and those do exactly what it sounds like. They mobilize glucose, they mobilize blood sugar, and they shunt that to the brain so you can make quick decisions, and to the muscles so you can fight or flee. So there's nothing wrong with cortisol. It's not bad. In fact, it can be very good. It's just that in our incredibly busy societies, we are much more likely to struggle with the overproduction of these stress hormones than the underproduction. But you do need some of this hormone that helps you mobilize energy stores to just do things like get up and get out of bed in the morning, and to be energized and focused, and to go about your day with enough enthusiasm and just raw brain energy to get things done and done well. But when you teeter over into the distress side of this curve, which I think is where so many of us land, that's really where the problems begin to occur. And it's really more the chronic secretion of these stress hormones that is a bigger issue than the acute secretion. Our brain was designed, in fact, to deal with those acute bursts of stress so that we could run away from a predator or fight it, whatever we deemed was best in that moment. But the stress response system, which is evolutionarily speaking very, very old, it evolved to deal with those very acute, very short-term stressors that we either survived or we didn't. And then when we did, the system would switch off and we'd go back into a relaxed state. It didn't evolve for the modern world, where we're not trying to get out of the way of a lion that's about to eat us. We're stressing out about things that are chronic. And our biology really didn't evolve for that. It evolved to deal with things that were much shorter term. So we're living with what you could say in some ways is an outdated system, at least as far as human happiness and human cognitive thriving are concerned. So please be aware that cortisol is not good or bad. It is just a hormone. It does really good things for you, but it can also do really bad things if you mobilize too much of it. So the key is to figure out how to stay at this optimal performance part of this curve, where you're really at the peak without being under or overstimulated by these stress-related neurotransmitters and hormones.